English, IELTS Listening Practice Test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. You will hear a woman calling a community centre to ask about hiring a room for an event. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, Greenfield Community Center. How can I help?
Hello. I'm calling to find out about booking a room at the centre for the evening of October the 12th.
Let me check. Yes, both rooms are free that evening. We have the main auditorium, which seats 180, or the Oak Room.
So you said there's also the Oak Room?
Yes, the Oak Room. That's OAK. It holds up to 90 people.
Well, we're running a fundraising quiz night, and we expect about 120 guests, so we'll need the larger hall.
Right. That would be the main auditorium then. For the evening of October 12th, from 6 p.m. until 11 p.m., the charge is £120. That's the weekend rate. On weekdays, it's £80.
Fine.
And I should mention there's a security deposit of £200. This must be paid in cash, and it's fully refundable provided there's no damage. The higher fee itself can be paid by card, check, or cash.
That's clear. Does the price cover tables and chairs?
Yes, everything like that is included.
And what about parking?
There's free parking on site for up to 50 cars.
Excellent. We may also need to use the kitchen facilities.
That's possible, but there's an additional £20 charge. It has ovens, refrigerators, and all the standard equipment.
That sounds reasonable. We can include it in our ticket price.
Good. I'll note that down. Before the event, you'll need to arrange a license if you intend to have any live music.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's not complicated. I can send you the application form, and about a week before the event, you'll have to contact our caretaker, Mrs. Lewis, to make the arrangements for entry.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Is there anything else I should be aware of during the evening?
Yes. Please remember the building is strictly no smoking.
Of course.
Also, if your quiz hosts bring sound equipment, they should unload through the stage door at the side of the building rather than the front entrance. It's easier and safer. Make sure that door is locked afterwards.
Understood.
And there's a black control box near the emergency exit. Please ensure nobody interferes with it. It regulates the sound level automatically and is required by law.
No problem. We don't want the noise too loud anyway. We'll also need a microphone for the announcements.
Just tell Mrs. Lewis, and she'll provide them for you.
Great. What happens once the event finishes?
You'll be given a code to open the cupboard with cleaning supplies, mops, brushes, detergent, all of that. The floor must be washed, not just swept, and all rubbish should be placed in the black plastic bags provided and left outside.
That's fine. We'll organize a team to help.
Decorations are allowed, but all decorations must be removed at the end, and chairs and tables should be stacked neatly at the back of the hall.
All right, I'll make sure of that.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 2. You will hear a guide talking to a group of visitors to a historic farm attraction. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Fiddy Working Heritage Farm. This outdoor museum offers a glimpse into farming life in the English countryside in the late 1800s. Everything here represents that time, and as you can see, all our staff wear traditional costumes from the period. Before we begin the tour, I need to share a few important safety points. Since this is a real working farm, please avoid scaring or harming the animals. We have many types here, and some are quite rare breeds. You should also be careful around tools. Some have sharp edges and could cause injury if handled, so please do not touch them. The surfaces can be a bit rough in places, and there are areas where you might slip, so we're glad to see everyone is wearing proper shoes today. Sandals are not suitable for walking around. We love having families visit, and children especially enjoy seeing the ducks and baby lambs, so feel free to bring little ones with you next time. Now, if any of you have brought a dog, I'm afraid they'll need to stay in the car park, unless they're registered guide dogs. That's just to ensure the safety of our animals and visitors.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Let me now describe the layout of the farm, starting from where we are. The building where you bought your tickets is called the New Barn, just to your right. We're standing at the beginning of the main path that leads across the farm. Over on your left is the car park. If you look towards the far corner of the car park, next to the main path, you'll see our scarecrow. It's not just for decoration. It's a permanent sculpture, much taller than a person, so it's quite noticeable from a distance. Now, ahead of us, directly opposite the new barn, you'll notice a hedge maze. It's located next to the side path, just over there on the right. The hedges are tall enough to block the view of small children. But don't worry, the maze is small and easy to navigate. See the bridge a bit further along the main path? If you're heading to the cafe, don't cross the bridge. Instead, take a right turn just before it. Follow the path around and you'll see the cafe building at the first bend. It used to be an old schoolhouse, over 100 years old now. For anyone interested in traditional crafts like basket weaving or woodwork, we run workshops here. You'll find samples and course info at the Black Barn. Take the right-hand path just next to the new barn. You'll reach the Black Barn at the first curve in the path. Now, about lunch. You're welcome to eat in the field if you've brought a picnic, but please clean up afterwards. If you'd rather sit somewhere with a roof, we have a covered picnic area. Just after you cross the bridge, it'll be on your right. Lastly, I must mention Fiddy House itself. To get there, cross the bridge and take the footpath that runs through the field to the left of the farmyard. You'll get a great view from there. It's a beautiful spot for photos, but please remember, the house is a private residence, so no entry inside. All right, if you're all set, let's begin our walk around the farm.
Now turn to section 3.
Section 3. You will hear two environmental science students called Sarah and Daniel discussing a project they need to complete. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
So, Daniel, I finally got around to reading that paper you mentioned. The one about the research into motivation in biology courses.
You mean the study carried out by Dr. Lena Hoffman and her team? Yeah, I thought it was fascinating that the researchers were a mix of educators and cognitive scientists. You don't see that combination very often.
I know. At first, I wasn't sure which students they were actually studying. They weren't all majoring in biology, were they?
No, they were students from the wider STEM fields. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But they all had to take biology classes as part of their degree programs.
Right. So from what I gathered, Hoffman's team started with the fact that women tend to be underrepresented in advanced biology modules, and even when they do enroll, their average grades are often lower than those of the men.
And no one's entirely sure why that happens.
Exactly. But the main thing the researchers wanted to investigate was how they could improve the performance of the female students. And to do that, they first had to work out what might be causing the gap.
If I remember correctly, they found that many of the women believed the men in the class assumed they weren't naturally good at biology.
Yes, and they thought the men expected them to do badly in assessments.
Which made them anxious, and that anxiety actually lowered their marks. But as it turned out, those assumptions weren't real. The male students hadn't been making any judgments about them at all.
So what Hoffman's group did was simple. They got all the students to complete a short writing activity before their biology lectures.
That's right. It was called a personal values reflection. The students had to write about something meaningful to them. It could be a hobby, a relationship, a belief, anything that mattered personally, not necessarily related to biology.
The point was to put them in a positive frame of mind before class.
And by expressing those thoughts on paper, it reduced their stress levels and helped them avoid the mental blocks that lead to poorer results.
What surprised the researchers was that this one task improved the women's grades from the C range up to the B range.
It didn't get them all to A's, but it showed they'd been performing well below their potential before the activity.
True, but the article left out details, like whether the students did the writing once or several times, and whether they were told the reason for it.
Because if they'd been told it might help them do better, they might have tried harder just to match that expectation.
Exactly.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
So, for our own project, I thought we could do something similar but test whether the topic of the writing task really matters.
You mean have one group do the same personal reflection and another group write about something factual, like a current event?
Yes, or we could mix it up. Half the class do the original type of writing and half do a factual task, and then compare the results.
That would tell us whether the improvement came from the personal content or simply from doing any writing at all.
Exactly. So at our meeting with Professor Lane on Thursday, we can present this as our idea. We'll need our aims clearly written by then.
I think we should also read Hoffman's full study. The summary we have might have left out important methodology.
Agreed. Oh, and I read another paper by a researcher called Pratt. She looked at whether men or women perform differently when working alone versus in mixed groups.
Let me guess, the women did better in groups?
That's what I thought. But actually the results were the same regardless of whether they worked alone or in a group.
Not very relevant to us then. What I'm slightly worried about is how we're going to measure whether our participants actually improve.
We might need to ask for advice about that. But the main thing is making sure our sample size is appropriate, not too small, but not so big that it's unmanageable.
That shouldn't be too hard. So, what's our next step? Should we check the schedule for biology lectures?
Or better yet, we could book an appointment with one of the biology lecturers and discuss our idea directly.
Yeah, that's a better plan.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now listen.
Section 4. You will hear a part of a student's presentation about the range of different species found in the world's oceans. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been researching marine biodiversity. In other words, the variety of living species that inhabit our oceans. Around 2 decades ago, scientists introduced the concept of what they called biodiversity hotspots. These are regions with an exceptionally high variety of species. One well-known example on land is Madagascar. These hotspots are crucial because they help scientists pinpoint priority areas for conservation work. While identifying them on land is relatively straightforward, knowledge about species diversity and distribution in the oceans used to be very limited, and no one was certain if similar hotspots existed underwater. That changed in 2005, when a Canadian marine biologist named Boris Worm examined fishing industry data on ocean species. He identified 5 main hotspots for large marine predators such as sharks and compared what they had in common. He expected them all to have abundant food, but to his surprise, this was only the case for 4 of them. The 5th had quite a low food supply. Instead, what all these areas shared was relatively warm water at the surface, even when deeper waters were much cooler. This appeared to play a role in supporting a wide range of these large predators. However, temperature alone wasn't enough. Worm also found that these areas needed to contain sufficient oxygen to sustain the high energy needs of such fish. 2 years later, in 2007, a researcher called Lisa Balance, working in California, began searching for ocean hotspots as well, but for marine mammals like seals and whales. She identified 3 such locations, and all were situated where different ocean currents meet. These boundary zones tend to have high concentrations of plankton, which form the base of the food chain for many marine species. Today, those aiming to safeguard endangered ocean life need detailed information. For instance, the International Census of Marine Life project has been surveying oceans worldwide, including the Arctic. One remarkable discovery there was the presence of numerous species living beneath the ice, sometimes under layers as thick as 20 meters. Many of these species had never been recorded before, and even certain species of octopus were found in such extreme conditions. Meanwhile, other scientists in the same project, focusing on deep-sea habitats, found dense communities of species clustered around underwater volcanoes, drawn by the warmth and nutrient-rich waters. Yet, the scale of threat to each species remains uncertain. The Global Marine Species Assessment is working to compile a list of endangered ocean species, based on factors such as population size, geographical range, and the rate of decline in numbers. So far, they have assessed about 1,500 species, but their goal is 20,000. For every species studied, they create a map of its distribution, which will eventually reveal not only where most species are located, but also the regions where they face the greatest danger. As for protecting marine biodiversity, several measures are suggested. First, more marine reserves should be designated to protect vulnerable species. Second, migration corridors need to be established for creatures like leatherback turtles, which roam the open ocean but come ashore to nest along the American coast. In addition, fishing quotas must be reduced to prevent overfishing of at-risk species. Lastly, the issue of bycatch, when fishing vessels unintentionally capture species they do not want, must be addressed. These animals are usually thrown back, often dead or dying. If fishing boats used more selective equipment so that only fish intended for consumption were caught, much of this problem could be avoided.
You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.